gets a goal? Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Greetings, sisters. Well, what a damp squib that was for most of us. Thanks so much for being here. We know that on poor weeks, such as the one many just had in Fantasy World, many just think, nah, I don't want to hear about FPL this time. But hopefully, we can provide you with a little bit of charge and forward today, as well as lifting you up and start looking forward, I guess, to the game week ahead. Joined as always by Sam. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Football aside, that's been awful. But aside from that, all very good. Went ski training, practice, whatever you want to call it, over the weekend. So that was a nice little distraction. So yeah, can't really complain. It's just the football that's a load of rubbish. So yeah, in a good mood. Looking forward to thinking more about FPL and trying to get back on the front foot again. So yeah, we've obviously got quite a lot of football going on in the background this week as well, which isn't FPL relevant, but gives us something to watch and something to enjoy, doesn't it? So yeah, looking forward to it. We are, as always, Who Got the Assist? On today's agenda, we're going to have a look at Game Week 22 results. We kind of have to. It's the point of half the pods. We don't really want to, but we will. Following that, we'll have a look at the fixture swings and analysing those upcoming swings in the calendar, mainly from next week onwards, to look through our plans and also what people might be planning to do, as well as players to obviously come in and out of our sides around the next couple of game weeks. Form versus fixtures makes a return, maybe more in-depth look at some of those players this week, because we think we might have a bit more time spare there. Then, of course, 1 week punts, best captains, and finally, how we're both shaping up ahead of Game Week 23. We think, or we've said this every now and then, that we think it's going to be a shorter one, and then it ends up being an hour and a half anyway. So we'll see how we go. But it's Tuesday, the 20th of Jan. Jan feels like it's going on forever, by the way. I don't know how you feel about that. But we've got European action going on in the background. The Champions League obviously going on right now. We've got City, that's over. That was an upset against Bodo Glimt. That was quite an interesting watch, 3-1. And then we've got Arsenal on in the background at the moment, who are currently leading, I think, at halftime or near to halftime, 2-1 away at Inter. So that's how we're doing in the Champions League. Shall we have a look at how we got on in Game Week 22, Tom?
Yes, indeed. January is endless, as one of my favourite bands once put it. So, yeah, a small red arrow for me, second one on the trot, and pretty much all my own doing. Down from 91k to down to 91k from 84k. So it's not a big drop again. Basically, the whole week's outcome hung not on captaincy. I did go back to Haaland in the end, but Ekatike and Haaland both blanked. Nor was it really the transfer in. It was always Rodgers for me. Obviously, I could have rolled it, could have done Tavernier or something like that, which obviously would leave me in a whole other heap of trouble. As I thought I might roll it on Friday night briefly, but I thought, no, you know what? I was pretty set on Rodgers. But it was yet another 50-50 swing, really. And it was a 9-point negative swing, Sam. And I was unreasonably grumpy about it, as I was saying to you just before we started. I'm not going to lie, on Sunday night. It was -1 for Nico O'Reilly, who I started over Tarkowski, who got 8 points. So yeah, -9 as my second -1 in my 11 in consecutive weeks as well, which didn't really sting. I'm not going to lie. I just really hate, I've long had an aversion to having kind of not idiots on my bench, basically, and this is why, like, there's something about this which really sticks in my craw. And I was thinking about it on the train home today. I suppose thinking about the decision, I also did wrong in terms of the FPL points outcome. But I don't know, I didn't expect Ake to start versus United, and maybe that was just me being stupid. Maybe I should have anticipated that Pep would think that Bumo would play on the right, which would mean Ake's defensive solidity would be better, and O'Reilly coming on at half-time maybe showed that sort of Pep needing a rejig to respond to what United were doing. I expected Villa to score at least one, and it was absolutely excruciating, something we both shared, Sam, as new Rodgers owners, to see Rodgers doing everything but scoring his travails, especially that first half block by O'Brien, I think, which had an XG of basically 0.5, which is pure torture, honestly. And perhaps I should have factored in DEFCONs for Tarko being pretty much sort of a foregone conclusion based on Tom Hadley's work, which would have raised the floor more. So yeah, maybe it's my fault. And I was punished. But fortunately, as I've got kind of quite a survivalist style team with most big threats nullified, I didn't drop too far. Double Arsenal defence. And also the Chow 9-pointer basically dragged me towards some semblance of safety. If Rodgers had returned, I think I would have gotten the green arrows. So it is what it is. Reading the tea leaves on O'Reilly now. He started tonight. And I'm starting to think that Ake and Guehi may be the left-hand side this weekend, potentially for City. So I may have a transfer to make, or I may play Chow. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, I want to speak about later on. But overall, I mean, yeah, it sounds very trite, me having a slight whinge here, because I suspect there's a bigger whinge about to come from my counterparts.
Well, I mean, you're still in the top 100k, so you're still having a bit of a stormer. All your chips to come. Yeah, it's a bad game week. Obviously, 38 points is never ideal, but you're fine. You're in a good spot, and you can get back on the front foot pretty quickly from the position you're in, I think. My team, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily just this game week. It's just been over the last few weeks, over this whole Christmas period. I don't feel like I've made any shocking errors. There were a couple of 50-50 contentious decisions that kind of went against me, and you can see the logic both ways. I think if there was an error, it was getting rid of Thiago for Ekitike, although at the time Thiago hadn't picked up an XG of 1 across like 6 games in a row, like cumulatively, and Ekitike was on fire. So at the time, it felt fairly logical. It has obviously really, really punished me. If I hadn't made that move, I'd probably be up around 150k right now. I didn't. I did make the move. So yeah, 34 points from me in game week 22. Very poor. Down to 365k. I think I was just hovering outside 200k going into Christmas and feeling really good about things. Might even been slightly ahead of you at the time, and we've just completely swapped positions. I've just kind of been in purgatory, I suppose, for a few game weeks, up and down by about 10k, 20k here or there, and then this one really hammered home the red arrow, a big red arrow. 34 points is a huge drop, and down another 60k. There were, 3 returners in my 11, all of them defenders. Timber and Gabriel. Obviously, Timber also got a yellow card, so only 5 points from him. Gabriel's well owned, so it didn't do me much good. Lewis Hall was the star, picked up 9 points in the end, got an extra bonus point added. So yeah, happy enough with him. Aside from that, I mean, it's just shocking. I think it's 43.9 million or something like that on my 5 expensive assets in my front line. So Saka, Foden, Szoboszlai, I'm including in that, Ekitike and Haaland. Could actually chuck in Rodgers as well and take it up north of 50 million. And they combined, I think, got, 8-10 points between them. Really, really poor. Rodgers, like you say, 6 shots on goal, probably should have scored. Saka being benched again, we'll, I'm sure, talk about that, but he's become a bit of a nightmare. Foden hooked at half time. Ekitike had plenty of chances and good XA as well. So I don't know how he hasn't scored me any points in the last few game weeks, but it is what it is. And Szoboszlai, just to put the cherry on top, missed his penalty. The only reason I own this stupid man. Missed his penalty, hit the woodwork, and that would have been the difference between the green arrow, or at least a grey sort of just rank holding game week, and a pretty big red arrow, which is exactly what happened. 34 points, down quite considerably. 2 free transfers next week. Yeah, it's just not great.
You've just been so unlucky. Like, you feel like every 50-50 you've kind of encountered has just not gone your way, and it has really been one of those sorts of times where, even though you've by the book made the move, which puts you in the best opportunity, gives you the best opportunity to score the most points, it's just punished you radically. What have you said a few times? Like, you've gone to jail for stealing a bit of tissue paper, effectively.
Yeah.
And it's just been absolutely ridiculous. And I feel like that's happened to a lot of people, honestly. Like, I've just from talking to people in the office today, even who were quite into FPL, and I was just like, "Oh, how you doing this shit?" Oh, I don't really want to talk about this anymore. I mean, look, every season is different. I feel this one has been particularly hard for FPL managers in terms of mobility. Like, it's been really hard to take anything on, and even on weeks where Haaland's been taken on, like the one just gone with Ekatike, we've not seen that pay off for anybody.
Yeah.
And Haaland, many are pointing this out, seems to be following this sort of usual pattern of being exhausted after Christmas, but there's zero diversity. In premiums are trustworthy assets with which you want to give that armband to. Maybe Bruno Fernandes will come through, maybe Palmer will come through, but it really at the moment feels like, oh crap, what can I do? Like that's why kind of this survival mode thing that I kept rabbiting on about has been so prominent in my mind. I suppose there's kind of lots of hope that this sort of upcoming period will see things open up again, just because it has been very much like you've got this pick and that's it. And if you don't go there, you're going to be screwed if they do well. And if you go somewhere else, you know the risks, but more often than not, people have been cowed into this flight to safety that I've kept rabbiting on about as well. It has been very, very difficult for a lot of people, and you're not alone in that, Sam, feeling that way. And I think it's one of those where you got to keep plugging away, as it were, and just hope you get some luck, because at the end of the day, there is a lot of that in this game. Unfortunately, as much as we'd like to give ourselves the illusion of control with everything that we do, with what we prattle on about on this podcast, and what other content creators prattle on about, there is an element of that. I mean, look at your team. There's nothing wrong with it, and you've had kind of such bad luck with penalties. It reminds me.
Yes, I think it's 6 misses this season already. So I'm on track for beating your record a few years back, which I don't want to break, but I'm very much in the running for breaking that 10 penalty misses. I think you said it was.
It was 8 in the Premier League, including so Kane scored, but it was a rebound, right? It was absolutely insane. That was the first season doing who got the assist. So
the curse is alive and well on the pod.
It only took me 5 seasons to get a good finish. So
Oh God!
You're halfway through now. You're halfway through. You are literally.
I was a consistent a little bit of a moment. I was a consistent top 100, if not top 50, 30k manager until I joined this pod, and it's all gone to absolute insert expletive there. Anyway, just got to keep plugging away. Hope the luck turns my way. I've undoubtedly made some mistakes, right? I'm not going to shy away from that, but I think, like you say, the punishment does not necessarily fit the crime in terms of the mistakes I feel I've made. There are a couple of players that I'm holding on to right now that people look at and say, yeah, you need to get rid of them. Foden, Szoboszlai, Saka. I agree, but probably not this game week. I think there's a few reasons to hold on to at least some of those picks for another week before really making the more powerful moves later on. So I'm hoping that the next couple of game weeks, things turn around a little bit. And obviously holding my chips back for later on might pay dividends, but I can't afford to fall back all that much more. If I'm down at 400-500k in a few game weeks time, buttons might start getting pushed just to try and divert from the standard strategy to give myself a chance of playing a big catch-up game. I mean, top 100k is still very much on. I'm not scared of potentially losing out that opportunity. I might not get there, but I've definitely got the opportunity. It's more, if I fall too far back, I lose the opportunity to push on to a really good rank. And I can feel that slipping away a little bit in the last few game weeks. So I've got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's about kind of just calibrating what you think you're going to be able to do now. But I don't think you're that far behind, honestly. And nobody just said in the chat, they look at Sam's team, or indeed most of the teams out there now, and you just wonder where the points are. There's nothing wrong with most. Yeah,
none of the big hitters. Yeah,
it's just been. It has been really, really difficult for a lot of people, and hopefully the swings that we'll speak about in a little minute are ones that are going to mean some mobility is reinstalled into FPL. We say, with both of us thinking like everyone else is, let's buy Bruno Fernandes back that week.
I mean, that's happening, right? Like we don't even need to record the game week 24 pod. We can just say, buy Bruno, done. We'll wrap it up. But
see you later. Or would you buy him this week? Who knows? Right, one piece of business before we get onto the swings. It's Mark Guehi to Man City. He was in a very interesting outfit. Maybe I'm showing my age. He wasn't wearing the high vis jacket that's been added by AI, but he was wearing very very loose fitting like flares, I believe. But it was a very kind of bin man-esque outfit. One of my friends at Great Mitchell generated this, which is brilliant. Do check out the YouTube. But yeah,
I mean, very convincing. I actually thought that was the graphic. Like that's really well done.
Dressed as a bin man. And I mean, Guehi 5.3, obviously been a bit of a bet noir of ours this season, Sam. And I was considering it the other day. I said to you that maybe O'Reilly to Guehi might make a lot of sense, but I don't know. It is one where I wonder whether to what extent he's going to be as interesting to us, but I don't know. It could go either way. So he probably won't be def-conning it. The set piece threat feels a bit lesser, and I feel like I need to remember, the prior thought that he was simply scamming his way to points, and his robotic owners were getting away with murder a little bit. But he is one to be monitoring going forward. I mean, cheap nail route into the City defence, and I mean, City are on our fixture swing list. They're an interesting sort of. They're just weird, aren't they? I mean, someone, Helena, said on Blue Sky to me earlier on, I somehow ended up with 5 Man City players in my team. Who'd have thought 2 months ago this would feel like a terrible situation with Wolves next? It just sums it all up so well, because they are so. It's just so strange at the moment, isn't it, with them? And I don't know. Guehi generally feels like one I'm going to be watching, but I'm not sure I want to buy him right away.
Yeah, I think the more I think about the Guehi move, the less I am convinced in him as an immediate FPL pick. I think he'll go straight into the starting 11. Given what we saw today, I think he's going to kind of have to. He'll be a brilliant player for them. He's an exceptional centre-back. Great signing as well, on the cheap. Obviously, monitoring the contract situation was important. Get ahead of the game, ahead of probably a frenzy of teams after him in the summer. However, even at the price, and I think he's going to drop to 5.2 tonight, I'm not sure, like, just the Wolves game really, like, is worth it to go for right now. After that, we'll come on to the fixture swing in a bit, and they've got good fixtures on the whole up to game week 31, but they're not so great that I'm like, I desperately need a Man City defender, and they've been really shaky at the back recently. They do seem very up and down. We're not really sure which Man City we're going to get at the moment, and I prefer to wait and see. I think I just don't feel any like real urgency about bringing him in. He'll probably get the odd set piece goal and the odd clean sheet, but I just think there are better fixture swings and better defenders to potentially be rushing towards ahead of him right now. And the more I think about it, the more I wonder if it's just one to wait and see on.
And I suppose the kind of the team is left behind, Palace. I mean, they're in disarray anyway with all the events that we've seen. But this kind of helped. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what difference their right side being restored with Munoz and Sarr back from a successful AFCON in terms of Sarr does for them. Again, with the swings coming, definitely be on the radar for that short stint of fixtures for situational picks. But it feels like defensively, that sort of run of steel was just over. Just defensively at the very least, right?
Yeah, again, it's another team that I'm not rushing back towards right now. I mean, if you've got Richards, I think he's 4.4 now, it's a hold for sure. And Munoz back soon will be exciting given his attacking threat. But again, a bit like Guehi, it's by no means an urgent thing to be sorting out. If you're on a wild card, maybe just chuck one in. But outside of that, no, I'd like just no real rush, no urgency. They're all over the place at the moment. Who knows what their back line is going to look like this week? I mean, Munoz coming back in will provide a bit more consistency there in terms of the back five. But yeah, I'm not in any urgent rush. I think game week 26, I think it's Burnley and Wolves back to back at home. I think it's those two. We'll come onto the fixtures in a sec. At that point, I'll probably want a Crystal Palace defender, but until then, I'm not. Looking at my side, I don't feel like I've got a gap ready for them. Someone asked in the chat a minute ago, I think referencing Guehi, whether if you have him, whether he's a keep. I think he'll play against Wolves, and therefore you definitely keep him for that game. After that, if you can bury him on the bench for a week or two, that's fine. I think it's Spurs and Liverpool, so Spurs probably playable. I just wouldn't be rushing towards him if I didn't have him already. That's all. So I I think he's fine to hold on to if you've got him anyway. How do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you found yourself with 4 or 5 City, like Helen said, I think you've got to just leave that for Wolves, haven't you? Despite Wolves looking better, it's playing with the freedom, like we said about Saints that year, Sam, of knowing they're going to be relegated, and playing with, I suppose that they are looking a lot better, and the underlying data is actually all right for them. But you leave it until after the Wolves game. For those who don't know, of course, the next transfer, if you've got 4, the next transfers you have to make, if you've got 5, will have to be selling a City player in the game. And that's the only way you can make it going forward. So let's move on to the fixtures then. If you're watching on YouTube, I've changed the view so the fixtures run from top to bottom, just so you can see basically week to week how many good fixtures there are amongst this cluster of teams, which are Arsenal, Villa, Bournemouth, a sneaky Brighton in there actually, not really spoken about very much, but their fixture run is actually really good up until game week 31. Chelsea, Palace, Fulham, Liverpool, City, and United, which are 10 of the teams. Interesting fact, Sam. 9 of the top 10 teams for XG are the teams getting a fixture swing, and 6 of the top 10 best defences in the league, which doesn't include Chelsea nor Villa. The likes of Spurs, Brentford, and Wolves all have better defensive records. Wolves, I just mentioned, than those 2 teams. Yeah.
Over what run?
Just over the course of the season.
Wolves have a better defensive record than, like, in terms of XGC than Chelsea over the season.
Yeah, according to the data I looked at earlier on.
Wow.
I've got a note. There's a bit of a data issue today, so Opta and FBref aren't getting on. There's been noticed by a few of the tech heads out there, so I had to cobble something together using Hub and Scout. Who knows? Who knows how trustworthy this is? So you've got.
Oh no, I trust you 100%. It's just an interesting.
I've had to use a little bit of a little bit of data cobbling together. I may be a tiny bit out, but yeah, Wolves have had a decent defense this year. That's kind of the top, the up point on that. And I think it's just worth noting as well that in terms of the swings, Arsenal, we've got. I think most people are going to have 3 of those players now. City maybe was 3, and now we're probably going down to 2, or maybe even down to 1 very soon. Game 24, I feel like Foden to Bruno's in the post for so many people. But beyond that, I mean, if we're looking at Villa, I think maybe Rodgers, Bournemouth. Well, Tavernier, some people went there. Looks like he's going to be out for a while, judging by Iriola's quotes, which don't sound particularly encouraging, do they? Brighton, I assume there's probably no one in there. Chelsea, I think, slowly picking up overall. Palace, I think most people did divest. Maybe there were a Lacroix or 2 hanging around in teams. Fulham, I think, are going to be decently represented. So I think you'll have probably Anderson, mate, and quite a lot of Wilsons going on. Liverpool, maybe 1. City, as I said, maybe kind of 2 or 3. I mean, United, probably 0 right now, but coming into 1. So there is, I think, thinking about what we were saying earlier on about it being quite a stale period, hopefully going to be an opportunity to invest in some teams that have good fixtures, have decent underlying data, and hopefully that will mean that things are going to change and there will be some opportunities out there.
Yeah, well, I think the important thing to note here is you've mentioned 10 teams there, a lot of which you listed maybe 1 or 2 players that some of us will have. I think there's an opportunity for a wild card there. There's enough there on paper as a run of fixture swings for some really good teams in there. You referenced the data a minute ago to attack a wild card if you feel like your team needs it in game week 24. So there's opportunity. I think a number of teams that you mentioned that we don't have much ownership on, Man United being an important one. I think Fulham, there's still opportunity for investment there. Crystal Palace over the next couple of weeks might start getting interesting again. But obviously, the golden goose is probably Chelsea from next week onwards. They've got 4 games, which are about as perfect as you could expect. 3 home games in there. The away one is Wolves, who are bottom of the league. Obvious data caveats aside, I think they're the team that naturally we want to target. But is there enough there? Like, who can we confidently be targeting from Chelsea right now for a 4-game week period? Before, admittedly, and I don't think this has been talked about a lot, as soon as game week 27 is done, you're going to want to sell them. Like, it's Arsenal away, Aston Villa away, Newcastle at home, Everton away after that. That's not good. It's just those 4 games, 24 to 27. So have a plan for getting them, that by all means. but also have a plan for getting rid of them afterwards, because you're probably going to want to get rid of all of them, if not two, or at least two of them, if you go for the triple up as soon as game week 28 hits.
Yeah, I mean, I've purposefully cut it off at game week 31 just because I think that we'll be reaching kind of wildcard season if you're thinking about your if you haven't, obviously, if you still got it, but judging by what you presented last week. But yeah, I think that, you know, the swing for Chelsea, the next four are obviously incredibly eye catching, but you have to kind of get on board with the fact that it is quite a short love affair, effectively. And also, they've got so many fixtures surrounding that, which make life a lot more difficult, don't they, in terms of picking up? I've seen that, you know, we'll talk about Enzo in a minute, but you know, you had Palmer, who's like, at the end of the game was down, heavily strapped up, scored a penalty, but otherwise didn't do very much in a game.
He was walking for most of the game. His heat map was horrendous as well.
Yeah, and I was all for it 2 weeks ago, and as I said last week, you just can't go there. And in that game as well, it's just worth noting that there's a lot of people kind of jumping on or thinking of jumping on Chelsea at the moment. It's not quite reflective in the underlying kind of transfer market. I think that Chalobah, Enzo, and João Pedro, there he is again, Sam, after doing a goal, and are all featuring in the top sort of 10, 20 transfers in. But it's going to be one of those where actually you can look at the context. So the context was the 2-0 scoreline utterly flattered Chelsea. When there were a couple of moments where you're like, oh, how have they not? How have they kept this clean sheet? It's miraculous. And looking at it's one of the things where you look at the points versus the underlying data and what you've seen with your eyes. I suppose that kind of helps to contextualize what you've seen. But nonetheless, it's hard to ignore that run, isn't it? And I think that I can't remember, was it a couple of years ago where like Sterling and Gusto brought in for a Luton game, and they did nothing afterwards. But there was one game where they both absolutely erupted. I'm sure a big friend of the pod, FPL Fran, had them for that. I think we were at Meets for that actually, and he got like a massive rank boost off of that. And after that, did nothing. But it didn't matter. The points were in the bag, and there were people looking at that run thinking, well, is there somebody I can throw in to that? I mean, there is a world, Sam, I'm not going to lie, right? I could look at Ekatike's Delap to pay for Potts up to Bruno. I mean, you are looking at that sort of very short-term sort of pick, but I quite like it. I don't mind it at all, honestly, for that period, because the fixtures are just that good.
I mean, the fixtures are incredible. The thing that I'll keep coming back to is the fixtures only matter if the players are playing the minutes. Like if you're not getting at least 3 starts out of any player, it's probably not worth going there unless you've got the deepest bench in the world and that you're able to make peace with the idea that, okay, I'm going to buy Cole Palmer, but in at least one of the games, he's probably either going to play 30 or nothing, I think. If you look at the schedule, aside from just these fixtures, it's a really, really tough run in terms of the congestion period for Chelsea. It feels like the Christmas period all over again for them in particular, more so than any other team as well, because they've got the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg, which they're not going to rotate for because they're in that tie. They're not going to just call it quits. Champions League, they're probably going to want to go for it still. It's going to be really tough to see which players, especially in the front line, are actually going to play these matches or get significant enough minutes. I can see a load of 60 minutes. I can see 60 minute one week, 30 minutes the next, 60 the next, 30 the next, with a lot of these players because they've got options in every position. You mentioned Delap, but Mark Giu might get minutes. He's already got minutes in the new system. So that could happen. The same with João Pedro. He'll get minutes, but will he play 4 times? I highly doubt it. Palmer, I think there's almost no chance given what we've seen of him recently and the fact that everyone with eyes knows that he needs to get the surgery, or at least it seems like he needs to get the surgery and he's just playing through it to try and make the World Cup squad. Enzo, probably your best bet, but even him, I've got my worries about. And then it's the defensive line where you're like, okay, you can probably pick Chalobah and Sanchez out and say they'll probably play all of the matches. But even Chalobah, I've got some doubts that he'll play all 4. but at least when he does play, it'll be 90. And if he doesn't, it's unlikely he'll come off the bench. So those 1-pointers probably aren't coming for him. So I'm really struggling. I want to buy Enzo in game week 24, but there's just something in the back of my head and saying, is he even going to play those 4? I don't know. Do you?
No, that's the thing. Like, I'd love to buy Chalobah, but I can't see a world where I would buy Chalobah. Well, I think I probably can, actually. I think that I'm likely to look at it this week. But even that's going to be with the caveat that I know that I'm buying a player in who I'd be kind of rubbing my hands thinking, oh, well, that's a clean sheet for me that week, or there's a good chance of me getting that clean sheet. And hey presto, he's going to be on the bench. Like, it's almost kind of like the only one that you can be certain of is the goalkeeper, which is it's the David Raya paradox all over again, isn't it? Like, it's if I had 4 or 5 free transfers, Sam, I'll tell you what, after this week, I would be looking to buy Robert Sanchez. But as it is, it's always the position of least interest in terms of making a transfer. Like, things have to be in some sort of, you've got to be on a god tier squad to be thinking about changing a goalkeeper around, right? And even then, I don't know. I'm sure something else will crop up. It is pretty mad, which is probably, but it may lend itself to that game week 24 wildcard that people are talking about. I saw Ross Raptor was saying that he was tossing one up for game week 24, and you can kind of see why, can't you? Looking at these fixtures, I mean, Arsenal, yes, okay, most people have the free, but maybe you might want to optimize again. Saka obviously started it tonight in the San Siro. Aston Villa, maybe Rodgers, but I don't know. Maybe add a cash or something like that. Bournemouth, who knows? Absolutely no idea now after Savernier's gone. Brighton, it might be a decent pickup in terms of Van Hecker or something. Chelsea, obviously. Palace have got that good 26-27. Burnley and Wolves. Fulham I've put on here, but I think that's probably a little bit later on. Game 28 to 31's their run. Same with Liverpool, it's a little bit later on. But City, who are moving out of, optimizing that to get Guehi, get Semenyo, and have Haaland as your free, I think that'd be absolutely fine. And obviously, Man United, Bruno, Boomo, Dorgu, let my Triple United dream live, Sam. But yeah, I mean, game 24 wildcard, a lot of people are looking at it. Could it be a possibility for someone like you as well?
I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I know the chat's saying I should throw the shackles off all of that. I'm not wildcarding next week. I'm sorry. I just don't think I need it. I'll have 3 free transfers if I roll this week, and I think I can get to the most important of the players that I feel that I'm going to be exposed against it, like if I didn't make any transfers. So Bruno Fernandes will be in, probably 1 or 2 of the other important picks that make this fixture swing look really appealing. So I'm probably not going to wildcard. Obviously, I could get a load of injuries and it feels like it's necessary all of a sudden. But I can see plenty of universes for other managers, not myself, other people out there, where a wildcard, it is a risk versus reward. And there's a strategy here with a good fixture swing that if you think the payoff from the next 8 game weeks to really attack this fixture swing, and there's a lot here to attack, if you think the payoff is big enough, steer into the skid, steer into that variance and try to maximize the upside for the next 8 game weeks and offset the amount of negative variance you might get later on in the season by not being able to quite attack as strongly without a wild card going through to the doubles and the blanks from game week 32 onwards. I think there's a perfectly good strategy there. You can wildcard now and you can probably navigate the rest of the season fairly well with a free hit in there, bench boost, triple captain. There's enough there to make it still a good back end of the season. But you will probably need to take a hit or 2 or be very clever with your transfers to get across from blank game week 31 through to the doubles in 33, blank 34, double in 36. There's going to be a lot of maneuvering. And I think you'll probably find a lot of your transfers are spent on navigating those peaks and troughs. Whereas if we save the wild card for that period in the season, we're probably all going to be on quite a similar team, annoyingly. And so there's less room for maneuver and less variance there. It's less likely to be a big payoff, but it's also less likely to really, really punish you. So yeah, if you need a big payoff to get back into it, the fixture swings are here now, and it could be the payoff you require to get your season back up and running.
Yeah, I think that it really depends. That's just cop out, isn't it? But it's so situational. It depends on your team. Blah blah blah. But it's so true. Honestly, I do think that if you are, I don't want to put an arbitrary rank cut off on it, but I'm going to try. Like if you're below 500k, maybe. Certainly if you're in the million, around a million OR, I think that it's worth trying, because I don't know whether sticking to the orthodox strategy and wildcarding and playing the chips, and everyone else plays the chips like I'm planning to do, is going to necessarily work for you. And I think there's got to be you've got to put the maybe just try to up the ante a little bit potentially. I think another point that I was going to make, which is annoyingly made in the chat by Martin, is that the next 8 weeks actually split up into two quite nicely. So 24 to 27, 28 to 31. There are teams which look better at the first four. So you referenced the Chelsea example. And then the second four, there are other teams that kind of work quite nicely in terms of hop on, hop off. So maybe your Chelsea players then become Liverpool players in 28, because that's when Liverpool's good fixtures start and Chelsea kind of run into Arsenal. Similarly, if you're looking at well, I think it depends on the blanks and things like that. But Villa players as well. And Wolves, Chelsea at home, Man United away, and West Ham at home. Maybe that might be a time to double up and get on the defenders in, because as noted, they've got a good long-term schedule. But I don't know, I feel like the golden goose really is United, Sam, because they've got Arsenal and Man City out of the way by the time we reach the swing in 24.
Yeah.
And they've got no Europe. They got nothing. They got nothing except the league. Like, they are the perfect FPL friendly team. And you know, I don't know. We can summarize next week by Bruno Fernandes. 3 words, done. But I feel like they are going to, later than I planned actually, emerge as being a team that we're going to have a lot of interest in, because hopefully they're going to be quite predictable. Carrick's at the wheel. I mean, what's he going to do? He's going to stick to the DNA of the club, blah, 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 all this stuff. Like, you know, I think that they are going to be quite predictable in terms of how they set up, and there's not going to be too much congestion surrounding them, is there? So I think having 2 or 3 of them may be where you look actually going forward, and thinking about, all right, if Dorgu keeps playing in that position, sure, 4.3. Bruno Fernandes a must. Could you add Bumo to it? Almost definitely, because you know, we've got Foden playing in all sorts of competitions. You may look at you know, a player like who you'd be bringing in, like a Palmer or something. Well, do we really have trust in them? Well, no, but do I have trust in Bumo at that price? Yes, almost definitely. And I wonder whether, sadly for anyone but United like me, like the Red Devils are riding to the rescue, perhaps, in terms of this season, in terms of being a source of FBL consistency, which has been sadly lacking since before now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm equally excited by them as picks, especially from next week onwards. I think, unfortunately, Bruno Fernandes is going to be owned by almost everyone very quickly. So having him is not going to benefit anyone all that much unless you captain him pretty quickly. But then that having the Brian Mbeumo's of the world could be that nice differential that if you are on a wild card, you can easily access. If you're not, it's quite, I wouldn't say impossible, but it is quite difficult to get to both of them relatively quickly. So yeah, wildcard, that's an advantage for you. I think we will, if especially if Mbeumo grabs a goal against Arsenal, then I think a lot of us will start trying to work out a way to get them both urgently. If not, I think it will mainly be Bruno with a little side order of Mbeumo hanging around the community, 10-20% ownership to begin with. Still plenty differential enough to be a powerful differential for you if you are in a wild card, or if you are looking at diverting your strategy from the masses. Outside of those two, I think Cunha, we've already seen, can't really guarantee him a starting place. Dorgu, I'd be very worried about longer term. I just can't see a world in which Cunha, Mount and Sesko keep missing out. I think it was situational against Man City. He'll get the odd game in an advanced role. He might get the odd game in a defensive role as well, but I'm honestly not all that convinced about him longer term. So I don't think he's going to be a factor. I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I just don't see how he consistently fits in there. Yeah, I really like Man United. I'm going to want Bruno minimum next week. I am looking at ways that I can also double up with Mbermo. It won't be easy, but his underlying data is fantastic, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a later section.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'd be very interested in having both of them if possible. On a wild card, I would definitely be looking at that.
I think it maybe sums up the season, as W said in the chat, that I was watching the Manchester derby. I was looking up Ahmad's price and being annoyed that he was 6.2.
Oh yeah, Ahmad actually is a really interesting one. Yeah,
I mean, that just sums it up, doesn't it? But I mean, you've just got to be. I think that they are the team to be looking at. But it's weird though, because the existing sort of template, as it were. Yeah, we've said a few times this season, it's not been as strong, but I feel like we have crept towards there being a fairly sort of appreciable one in recent weeks. I do think the likes of Rice, Rodgers, almost definitely Haaland, Thiago will stick around. But I just wonder whether we might see a bit of a disruption here with these teams over the next 8 weeks before we hit what is probably going to be wildcard season, let's be fair. Unless there's some sort of weird sort of outcome of events, which I'm sure you can give voice to in a second, which would mean we might end up wildcarding earlier. I feel like the Lucy season, we ended up wildcarding game week 26 or something like that because of how things fell, that it was just really obvious that, okay, wildcarding right now. But I do hope that we might see, forward 3 or midfielder 5 open up. And we might see the defence, which has admittedly oddly been kind of the main area for gains recently, with Chow and Tarkovsky. Those have been like the main things which will see me get a green arrow. Hopefully that will open up as well. And Munoz coming back comes to mind as well as like an example of a player who might be quite exciting, but also difficult to reach. I'm just hoping there are going to be these opportunities, honestly. Not so much for me, because I'm obviously hoping you all fail and I can kind of just safely ensconce myself top 100k. I kid. But yeah, I think that it's always good for the game when we do get these opportunities and these options, and it has really started to really show that the unique context of the season has really started to grate on many people, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been particularly frustrating because there are a lot of picks out there right now that we've got seasons of data and a high level of confidence in that have just disappeared as picks recently that really underperformed. And then a lot of other picks that have until recently never really been a factor. And they've been players that have been hanging around for a while. And we, having seen plenty of seasons of FPL and plenty of data, plenty of matches, players like Harry Wilson, Bruno G, they've never really been massive issues in FPL before. And I think the more stubborn managers like myself, I absolutely include myself here, are reluctant to change their perspectives on either side of those players, whether it's the players that have always been tried and trusted, putting up good underlying data, continue to do well season on season. They've gone quiet for an extended period of time. There have been other factors like Saka losing his minutes a little bit and Palmer being injured, which have not helped. Salah losing his place altogether as well factors in slightly. And then on the other side, you've got players who, I suppose, some managers, myself included, have been a bit more slow to react to. And I think there's been more of those than normal. Most seasons you can identify at least one or two. This season, it feels like there's been quite a number of those. And then on top of that, I think you referenced it earlier. It's whenever you look at going against the prevailing wins, you've not necessarily been punished in all of the weeks. So let's take captaincy in isolation. Plenty of managers have gone against Haaland, and that decision was correct in the last few weeks. But rarely have we actually found the second best pick or the third best pick or even the fourth best pick to actually go on and massively haul and punish those who stayed on Haaland. So yeah, it's been a difficult few weeks for managers who might stick to their guns, let's say, rather than play a more flexible style. And I'm just hoping that sticking to my guns for one more week pays different dividends. The one thing I will say is I'd be very surprised if we go back to a front three. I think that is a trend that I'm pretty confident. And there just aren't that many good strikers out there right now, honestly. I think Thiago's been good. Ekitike, Haaland, obviously, although he's looked tired recently. Outside of that, the odd DCL hanging around, but there are just so few forwards that I trust. There are loads more midfielders I'm interested in, tons of defenders in comparison. I think it was the FPL Wire, just to round off my point earlier today, were referencing a bit of data, which is, I think there's only 5 players in the league this season that have averaged over 3 shots per week. That's crazy. Like usually that's like 12 to 15 players. Only 5 players have averaged that this season. And that is such a significant drop off. And obviously that massively impacts how valuable strikers are. So I would be surprised if we went back to 3 up front being a meta, unless 3 very specific strikers ended up being irresistible all of a sudden. But there won't be many more after that.
I don't know, man. You see Ekitike go off against Bournemouth, 2 home games against Newcastle and Man City, admittedly quite difficult. But then their run's okay. Standout.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying, though.
I know, but then Thiago, him, Haaland. Then suddenly
yeah, but that is free.
I know, but that works as a free, right? You know what I mean?
No, right. Yes.
You're saying the pool's quite dry other than that.
Yes. Yeah, because then all it takes is one injury or one of those players to not look great all of a sudden, or a bad fixture swing. With midfield, we're never starved of options. There's 20 players that at any given moment could end up being good. With forwards, after those, you've named those 3. After that, like João Pedro, who's getting 60 minutes a match. Like there's not really anyone. So granted, that specific 3, fantastic. But I think I struggle to see beyond that being a meta 3 in any way. I think it has to be a very specific 3 to be interesting now. And I because of that, I think it's much more likely that a midfield 5 or a back 4 is going to be the play.
I feel like 3-5-2 always seems to be how it ends up. I'm not sure why. I think because there's more midfielders than forwards, obviously. I suppose it's kind of why that is. But yeah, no, I see what you mean now. Sorry, I just was.
No. It's fine. I just didn't know if I explained myself very well, because obviously there will be people listening who are like immediately like, yeah, but we've got 3 right now, Sam. What are you talking about? But yeah, it's more the pool I'm talking about. Like you can have 3 strikers. There are 3 playing strikers you can pick from. But I struggle to see how like the meta becomes, like it's going to be a 3 up front across the community, because I think it would have to be those specific 3 right now. Outside of that, it's really, really hard to find any that I think provide better value than a lot of the midfielders or defenders. Put it that way.
The disrespect to Brian Brobby.
Right. I know. I'm sorry.
So yeah, I think that kind of verged into a bit of a analysis on why this season's been difficult, but also hopefully quite useful in terms of the upcoming swing. We will again hopefully be able to go into this a bit more next week with a bit more information. I'm afraid it's going to be quite a hot topic, which is going to be hopefully something which FPL managers need to adhere to. Form versus fixtures is obviously no different there. Obviously, a lot of midfield last time, but still relevant. And also, no Thiago this week. I'm just sick of him being on here every time, Sam, honestly.
We all are.
And just that Forest game up next. I mean, that's going to be a bit of a worry for non-owners. But then after that, you've got Villa, Newcastle, both away, and Arsenal at home. So hopefully get a bit of respite. But yeah, 1 week of behind the sofa, I guess, Sam, for when it comes to Thiago.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm just hoping that the gods of FPL fate are on my side for 1 more week with him. And then after that, I'm happier to take him on. But this week was the one I was going to be worried about. I think under Dyche, the Forest defensive data has been top 5 in the league. So I'm not confident. I'm quite worried, but I don't think I massively hate taking him on with Ekitike away at Bournemouth, who have their own problems right now. So yeah, famous last words. He's going to go bag a hat-trick and punish me yet again. But I think if you don't have him already, he's probably not a player to urgently go out and grab ahead of what's coming after Nottingham Forest for me. I will want him in game week 27 or 28 though. I can't remember when the fixtures turn back, but I will want him again soon. So I probably wouldn't be selling him, honestly.
Yeah, it's 28 when it turns around again. Maybe we should have had them on the graphic, but yeah, that's my fault. Right.
Can't have them.
Fine. I'm obviously he's not going anywhere for me. So yeah, I mean, we've really touched on a lot of this, which is quite good. Maybe we will have a short pod today, Sam. Let's see. So yeah, Bruno, I think we're at the there is no alternative stage with him. He has to come in, and as mentioned, the fixture be nice and pretty plain sailing now. And I think that I think it might be about supplementing him because I suspect we'll have the Fulham game, and there's obviously some people who have had the Man City game to delight, especially if you're an analytics head and you've kind of just adhered to the model. You brought him in this week. Some may be doing the same this week because my review is hell bent on me buying him no matter what, which is something we've noticed before.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Is he?
Yeah, the review man in the background.
No, fair enough. She is fairly keen on me buying this week. It depends on the team composition, of course. But yeah, I think you may have Fulham maybe as like a slightly impactful own, and then after that, I think everyone will be on. So maybe it will be that we're looking at someone like a Bumo with Bruno. But I think it can't be instead of, can it? But the two of them together could be a very impactful duo, I believe, for the rest of the year. Obviously, depending on doubles, and maybe just for the next 8 with that swing. I mean, they're going to play. They're going to start. They're going to get decent numbers in terms of minutes. I mean, I think that's great. I don't know. I am because I am in that 3-4-3 at the moment and do have Nekatike to get rid of. Suddenly, a plan to try to install Bumo alongside Bruno and just kind of stick him in and see what happens could be something that I could be looking at. I mean, it's got to be with Bruno, right, though?
Yeah, if anyone's coming on this or listening to this pod hoping for me to offer an alternative to Bruno Fernandes, they probably haven't listened to me all that much because, for me, he's not essential. No one is, but in game week 24, I'm going to buy him. so I do think it's probably who can you bring in alongside him, because especially in that 10, I mean, people have got different opinions and we've seen the data previously. I think Solio did a fantastic piece on his underlying points in different positions, whether he played more advanced or not. It actually doesn't have that much of an impact on his historic points, but I mean, he just looks so good in that role. Straight up against Man City, we've obviously seen in the past him be very effective. They're playing, we think, pretty counter-attacking, free flow, fast break football. Bruno Fernandes is surely going to benefit from that. Yeah, he's in for me game week 24. I would like to find a way to also bring in Brian and Burmo. I don't have him down as anywhere near as essential, but if he was around the same sort of price as Enzo Fernandez, I would be probably going with him despite the fixtures over Enzo. It's only that 1.6 million difference that's making me wonder, like, what do I need to sacrifice in order to go with Burmo over Enzo? And then is it therefore worth taking that, considering Enzo's data is also very good? But I would really like Burmo alongside Bruno, because like I said earlier, everyone's going to own Bruno. So you're not going to get much benefit out of it. It would be quite nice to get a little bit more joy out of every goal that Man United score, because I think a lot of them will come from this duo.
There's definitely world I can get there, and I'm actually quite tempted to do that. Which, I mean, obviously foregoing the defensive move this week, but we'll speak about it. I really like those two. Rodgers, fairly decently owned, ticking up in underlying data. I suppose the only kind of blocker to him being quite widespread is that he just not particularly beloved by the models. If you got penalties though, Sam, could he be? I mean, I just wonder whether the next pen they got, because Tiedemann was taken off it, and Watkins was put on it. Neither of them seem to have settled. Rodgers has, I think, done all right with penalties in the past. I know if you've got penalties, I think he suddenly becomes the real deal, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I think penalties is the only thing really missing, and I bought him not knowing whether he would have the penalties in the first place, as did you. I've got a sneaky feeling, gut feeling, might be off, But I reckon he does take the next penalty because he has turned into a real like talismanic figure at Aston Villa this season. And, like everything's running through him. If you watch the game over the weekend, which sadly we both, I feel, did, he was the only player looking to make really anything positive happen for Villa in that one. It wasn't a great performance, but he was brilliant and he was trying to force the issue. So given that, I think about 7 or 8 weeks ago, Emery in a post-match press conference listed the 3 nominated penalty takers as Tielemans, McGinn and Rodgers. Tielemans has missed his last 2 penalties, I think now. And McGinn went off with an injury, right? So even if those 3 were in the running, I think Rodgers might be the next one, you know. I can't guarantee it. I hate saying it on a pod because it makes me look stupid when he inevitably doesn't take the next one. But I think he will. I actually think he will. And at 7.7, if he does, that is great value with great fixtures coming. So yeah, I'm all aboard.
Yeah. Okay. Watkins, any interest?
Until they went out and basically started giving flirty eyes at Mateta, Abraham, and every other striker that's moving at the moment, I was tempted. But now I would be worried. Like Emery has never really seemed to love him or be all that enamored with him as a player. They're always looking for another striker to offset his minutes. And I fear that that's coming in the next few days. I think if he gets the 90 minutes, I'd love to have him, but I don't think he will. So probably not.
Okay. No, I probably am about the same actually, just because I think that Haaland and Thiago as the front 2, that's got legs, hasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
And yeah, so 3-4. The striker pool, if you compare it to Bumo as an option in midfield, there's no contest really, is there?
Yeah.
Enzo Fernandez 6.5. Owners who went early, a very fortuitous assist this weekend, it's fair to say. The numbers weren't anywhere. He seemed quite deep. He did do his box crashing sort of thing a couple of times. Obviously, the underlying data is lovely. But it's under a different manager, as we've mentioned a few times. So it presents the usual dilemma of hit and hope versus wait and see. I suppose, Sam, at the price, I'm happy to do the latter and basically just feel the copium there. He's priced kindly and I can jump on if needed to cover a negative. But if you do want to jump now, that's more than understandable. Like Palace is 6s and 7s without doing a dance. West Ham at home, Wolves away, and into those kind of like great quartet fixtures. I can see why a lot of people are interested.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any worries about him as a pick, generally speaking. Like if you wanted to buy him this week, I think we've got enough confidence in him as being at least a decent pickup to go for it. If you've got a problem area in your midfield that needs urgently solving, you want to dive on him a week early, no problem. I think I would prefer, given that I feel like I can get by this week, just to see the positions he takes up against Palace. Just one more week. I think even during the game against Brentford, they were kind of shifting around the formation, getting used to what is being asked of them. And I think they got handed a piece of paper at some point, and that instruction seemed to be, Enzo, what are you doing dropping so deep? Get forward. So I'm interested to see exactly where he does play in game week 23 against Palace and use that as a bit of a loose measurement for whether or not I think he's a really good pickup in game week 24 or whether he's just another option in that pool of players that I could consider. So yeah, I one more week for me, but he's on my radar, no doubt.
What's the message? Just guys, believe in yourselves and connect more. You know
I'm
the word
managing you, which is aging you as men. So think about that, guys.
Who said it? David Brent or Liam Rossignol?
Leroy
Rossignol, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Right, okay, Chalobah as well. So, mentioned already, very fortunate to have a clean sheet last week. And as I said already, apart from Sanchez, he's probably the one to have defensively, but you just can't count on the minutes. I suppose the kind of a saving grace for him, if he wanted to go kind of way up high with someone like Cucurella, maybe, it would all have the same sort of net effect, which would be there's going to be one of those games where you're kind of counting your points, as I said earlier on, expecting a clean sheet, and hey, you know what, he doesn't show up. But at least with a centre back, there's probably a decent chance that you'll have your first bench that week. So something to consider over the next 5, which are all good fixtures for Chelsea. I don't know, man. I think thinking about Chelsea in general, there is a good chance I just swerve it altogether and invest elsewhere. I haven't got that many free transfers, and it kind of just feels like there's too many buts about them.
I get that.
For me to be thinking that one of my transfers is best spent there, because there is a route where I end up with Bumo and Bruno in 2 weeks' time, and that looks a lot more attractive to me at the moment.
Yeah, I completely sympathise with that. And with all of my future planning, if I do roll the transfer this week, 3 frees next week, I can get to a Chelsea player. That would likely be Enzo or Chalobah. Right now, I think I'm slightly favouring Chalobah just because I feel more confident that I know what I'm getting. Enzo won't be a bad pick if he gets the minutes, but I do worry that there's at least one benching coming in that period. And if so, then that's a problem. With Chalobah, I mean, he's basically been a locked-in 90-minute man all year. If he was ever going to get a rest, it would be with all of these 2-day turnarounds, or 3-day turnarounds, I suppose, 2-day gaps between games over the next few weeks. But I've got more confidence in him than I do with Enzo. And like you say, if he is benched in any one of those, it's unlikely he comes on. So you're not getting a 1-pointer. You're getting a pretty decent first sub, and I can probably live with that a little bit more than 30 minutes from Enzo or 60 minutes and brought hooked early for a rest ahead of the next game.
Yeah,
but they're both in the running for me. I don't want to rule either of them out. I don't think either of them are going to be essential, but both equally are good situational picks if you've got a spot in your team and a transfer ready to use. I think if I was looking at buying a defender this week and I already had Gabriel, Chalobah would probably be top of my list. And equally, if I'm looking for a mid-price midfielder, Enzo's not too far off either. I just don't have them down as essential buys.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I'm hoping the ownership stays low enough. I think hopefully we're out of the woods now where we had that ownership just accelerating up to ridiculous levels because of those retransfers we spoke about. There was a time pressure where people were kind of just going for the first option. Hopefully it's not going to be too punishing, and hopefully people who hopefully the other picks are going to be able to match them net over the next 5 weeks. And there will be, because of how good the fixtures are, some weeks where things are actually going mad for Chelsea, but I'm sure there'll be other weeks where the key starters don't play, and there'll be lots of management across the board, and going elsewhere or not kind of being all in on them is going to be all right. But I'm pretty sure Tony said in the chat earlier on, he's got Chalobah, he's got Enzo. I think that's, if you're wildcarding now, well, wildcarding 24, those are a perfectly reasonable double to have up. I think they may be. I stick Sanchez in goal if it was me. I feel like David Raya paradox reigns supreme. And finally, Bournemouth through the guise of Krupi. 4.6 million starting centre forwards. Iraola said he was pleased with Krupi's development and deployed him in a 10 behind Evan Nielsen. But there is a further hit to their productivity. So Tavernier off injured. Iraola said it was a blow and he'd be out for a while, which is obviously not great if you have got there. So they'll be definitely looking to dip into the transfer market, Sam. Bournemouth, an interesting one just generally because of that kind of short run. Obviously, the Senesi at the back, Krupi going forward, but all of the likely lads have pretty much been taken out. I feel like Evan Nielsen is one of those who's just been too inconsistent and too expensive for what he offers for me to be at all interested in looking at him. And with Krupi, you've got an interesting thing where if Matthias Mane gets double game week, and people like me are looking to sell Ekatike to fund a cheaper midfielder up to Bruno, then I think Mane becomes the pick, doesn't he? I don't know. Interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, Harry, who's obviously been on the pod in the past, mentioned a really good point with Mane, though, that I hadn't considered. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to want to use a transfer on getting rid of him in game week 31, when if obviously he doubles in game week 26, he'd be blanking in 31 as a result. So you might find yourself in a bit of a jam and only get the same amount of fixtures out of him anyway, come game week 31. So actually, the more I think about it, the more I'd be like, I think I would prefer Kroupy over Mane. The data is so much better. The minutes aren't great, but as good as Mane's looked, I don't expect Wolves to score all that many goals. And even if he's effective in one particular game week, if they do double in game week 26, it's also an extra slight headache in game week 31, where if I've got him as well as my triple Arsenal, which would be the two teams doubling and then blanking, of course, it's another player I've got to worry about having on my bench who's not playing. I don't know how much I love that. So I might be tempted to go with Kroupy if I was picking between one or the other right now, but he's far from an essential pickup because his minutes are never guaranteed. Even with all the injuries, he's still getting subbed off early quite often. If he takes penalties, though, all is forgiven and he becomes essential at 4.6, right? So we've got to wait and see who the next nominated taker is for Bournemouth, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, realistically with Mane, like you're probably looking at 4 points, aren't you? For if double game 26 does occur.
Yeah, maybe a lucky goal or assist, but outside of that, yeah.
So Creepy is potentially kind of playable. Like for me, and I was obviously as a Wilson owner, who's likely to stick around till a wild card. That week he's got Man City away, so that's why I was looking at Mane, just thinking, well, okay, I can hide Wilson on the bench and play Mane that week, and then kind of just figure it out in 31, you know. But yeah, there are kind of certain scenarios where Creepy suddenly becomes like, not people use the term game breaking all the time, but I don't think he becomes game breaking, but he does become very attractive. I think there's an awful lot that Bournemouth are going to be able to do in the transfer window. And I think that's something that people need to be borne in mind. Whereas I think Mane will have the minutes. It'll just be about kind of how you figure out how you then dead end 31. We've still got 8 weeks to kind of do that. So I'm not as concerned about that. It is a good point from Harry, but I'm not as concerned about that as others would be, because I also think we've got the lack of a second premium, as it were. If we're saying that Bruno is the second premium, a lot of us are going to have alongside Haaland. Realistically, you should have a lot of money to play with, so it won't be the worst thing. It's more of a transfers thing. Isn't it, than a money thing. Yeah, and I think that's too much of that is TBC for me to be particularly worried about that.
Yeah, I suppose it depends who it is that blanks on the other side of the Carabao Cup final, right? So if it is Man City, we might have one or two players in there, maybe a Crystal Palace player or two hanging around from their good fixtures in 26. So I'd just be a little bit nervous about how many transfers I need to have aside in game week 31 if I did want to navigate that week with transfers. Obviously, some won't do that, but if that you then also add a Mane into the mix, it's an extra transfer needed to get to a playing 10 or 11 in that blank. So yeah, just one to monitor. Like by all means, go for it. It's a cheap option. It's not going to break apart your season by picking him over Kroupy. And obviously he's got a potential double in 26, but I think at least with Kroupy, you've got much better data, and I think you can probably hang your hat on that for a little while. But like you say, they're going to move in the market, so who knows what his minutes are going to look like.
And if you buy him in 24 as well, there's an argument you could play him against Wolves away. So
yeah,
no, I'm behind that. All right, well, lots to think about. It's given me a new transfer route, which has completely upended what I'm going to talk about when it comes to my team now. But hey, let's go to 1 week punts very quickly. So last week, a bit of a disaster for you. Not so much for me, with Wirtz getting a 10-pointer. Ekitike, sadly or happily, depending on how you look at it. For me, it was kind of happily because I was kind of quite bullish on Ekitike last pod, and they both blanked somehow. 132 plays 101, and this week's picks, you've gone with Phil's son.
Yeah, I've gone with Collins. Decent, obviously, like decent home game. Forest don't score a lot of goals. He's very good on the DEFCON. I'm basically just trying to run through the players that I wouldn't want to captain or use the Joker card, whatever you want to call it, later on in the doubles, who do well defensively on the DEFCON, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I'm going with Collins this week. and onto some bigger players hopefully pretty soon.
Fair enough. I've gone for using up my Raul voucher versus Schrodinger's Brighton. You just never know. You never know. I've got Wilson for that one. Could end up playing Anderson actually at that one as well. I mean, they are the most quite inconsistent team in the league. I'm going to say you just never know which one's going to show up. There's a fine line for them between brilliance and idiocy, and I just kind of I've got a feeling that if things do go their way, you could walk away with Raul getting goal and assist somehow out of that one. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. The two jokers are in the pocket, and who knows, might be used very soon. Neither of us have gone for a City player against Wolves, which probably shows everything about where we are this season.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I can't actually remember which City players I've even used so far, to be completely honest. I've probably used Semenyo at some point previously as well. So
we have, yeah.
we'll have a double game week soon to use Haaland and all of that stuff. So yeah, well, there's still time.
Cool. All right. So captaincy this week, I've got Haaland, Ekitike, and Thiago on here. Ekitike just because of Bournemouth's XGC being so shocking, and Thiago just because at home against Forest probably looks quite decent, and Haaland. And I don't know, I feel like even though if you were an alien who has just started watching the Premier League over the last few weeks, you'd be looking at it and just going, well, clearly Haaland's the guy. No, probably not actually, because they've been rubbish. And Haaland tonight had an interview with TNT, and he was asked kind of what's going on. And he said, I don't have the answers. I take full responsibility of not being able to score. Just apologise to everyone, every Man City supporter, every supporter that travelled to Bodo, because in the end, it's embarrassing. Honestly, I don't know what to say because I don't have the answers. And what I can say is sorry. It does feel that, as many people have noted, that he's having his sort of annual slowdown around Christmas and New Year. But this week, Sam, it's quite difficult to conjure up an alternative, right?
Yeah, I again, it's something you mentioned earlier on. It would be great if there were some big alternatives out there that you could really rely on. If Bruno had a better fixture, I would be all over that this week. But against Arsenal away from home, I just can't do it. So yeah, Haaland at home to Wolves, one last ride. And then after that, we might, if he blanks again in that fixture, I think a lot of questions start getting asked. There are some decent differentials this week. Like you say, Ekitike, Thiago, wouldn't even mind Gabriel, whose record since coming back from injury and previous to injury has been incredible. So any home game for him is a decent chance of some points, whether that's attacking returns, defcons, or clean sheet. So Gabriel may be arguably slightly in the mix, but it'll be on Haaland for me this week. The fixture's just too good for me. I know defensive data has not been bad for Wolves, but I think is the gap between the XGC for 9th and 18th like the difference of like 2 goals at the moment.
It's
on the
tiny. It's tiny.
Yeah, so it's not.
It's like the points in the Premier League. Like if you look at the table, which I'm very, very flipping guilty of never looking at. And I saw it. I think I saw it today because I saw a tweet on. I saw a poster on Blue Sky about it. Like it's insane. It really is. Like Bournemouth, right, in 15th with 27 points. They get 6 points and they're in 7th. Like it's absolutely wild. And it's the same with the underlying data. Like, it's so bunched up, which again might be kind of symptomatic of why this year's weird.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think if we're talking about the captaincy, some people will probably reference, oh, this is an opportunity to go against a pretty decent defense and the data's been good or all of that. But there's not that much difference between good and bad in terms of the data, in terms of the placing in the league table. And I think sometimes it's nice to look at those tables and almost look at the bunchings to really appreciate what is equaling good or bad on a table, because the difference is very minute in terms of league table, in terms of form, in terms of expected data. So it's not something that I can really use at the moment to like form my opinions or base my decisions on, because like you say, it's so tightly bunched. Another 10 weeks or so, it might be a bit further apart, but a lot of the teams are fairly evenly matched this year. There's not a lot in it between most of the league, and Wolves have been arguably relatively unlucky to be only on 8 points given the underlying data. That being said, still one of the poorer teams in the league, so I'm more than willing to target them this week.
Yeah. Sorry, an error in the graphic if anyone's watching on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
right. It's all right.
Yeah, ignore that.
Don't worry.
Right, okay. Yeah, I promise you'll Captain Haaland. Right, let's move on to our teams then for this week ahead. You've got 2 free transfers, and you said it's really it's a roll week, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it will be for me, barring injury. One thing I did kind of consider is Szoboszlai across to Enzo, but I'm not certain that Enzo's the Chelsea player I'm going for yet. So I'm not gonna make that move this week. For me, it's a benching decision. I'm probably gonna roll to 3, and next week I'm gonna sort out my team a little bit with Bruno coming in and probably using 2 transfers elsewhere. Outside chance I even take a hit next week and do 4 and really try and correct the ship a little bit, get back on the front foot. But we'll get to that when we get to that. This week, Nottingham Forest at home for Kelleher, absolutely fine. Gabriel and Timber against Man United at home. Then Anderson currently starting at home to Brighton, but that's part of my benching dilemma. Midfield 5 of other Anderson, also part of my benching dilemma. Rodgers, Saka, Foden, Szoboszlai, another player that I would consider benching, and then up front, Haaland and Ekitike. So currently in a 3-5-2, my 2 on the bench are Hall at home to Aston Villa, Alderete away at West Ham. But like I mentioned, there's probably 2 players that need to be benched out of both Andersons, Szoboszlai, Hall, and Alderete. And I have no real idea. Maybe even Rodgers away at Newcastle, arguably. Any of them could end up on my bench this week. Right now, I've taken Hall out because I'm playing Rodgers, so I'm like maximizing variance, but that might not be the wise play. I've got Anderson away at Brentford, but I've also got Kelleher in goal at home to Nottingham Forest. So that is kind of up against each other. Yeah, what do you think? Should I basically just bench Szoboszlai because he's probably going to be off penalties now with Salah back? I don't know.
You got to give him Bournemouth, haven't you? Given how rubbish their underlying defense data is, I would try to find a way to put Alderete on somehow.
You don't reckon West Ham will score at home?
I mean, they are back, aren't they? They're back.
Well, no, they just played Tottenham. There's a difference.
That's true. Oh, it's obviously been facetious. Yeah, I think that Sunderland have been defensively very sound, haven't they? I think that's
especially
a decent,
at home, though.
Decent gamble. It's a decent gambit to make. Maybe be tempted to put on Alderete over Anderson potentially.
Which
the rest of it, Anderson.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I think I'd play Anderson. Because I think that Anderson is likely to just get your 4 points. So you can just move on and forget about it. And Anderson, I mean, he's been there or thereabouts DEFCON obviously all year. But I just feel like maybe Alderete is also he's not as good at DEFCON, is he? But you've got a decent chance of it coming through for you, and also West Ham. It's something in my head is dinging about them not being very good at set piece defenses. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
why.
that is a thing. I'm pretty sure that is a thing.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to my mind about benching Alderete. And maybe I've completely made that up. But I do feel like I want to give the Paraguayan a go at that game and bench Anderson. But yeah, I mean you're dealing with low EO players regardless. So
yeah, they're all my differentials. So it's basically I'm picking 3 differentials out of the 5 options here. I also do kind of want to start Hall as well. I know it's not a great fixture at home to Aston Villa, and it does put me up against Rodgers. But yeah, at home Newcastle have been good, and Hall has also been one of the least concerning issues in my team recently. He's been absolutely fine, so almost want to reward him for that. On the flip side, Alderete has been absolute rubbish since I brought him in. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really quite on the fence about who I'm going to end up benching here. Yeah, difficult one, but I don't want to take up the rest of the pod.
How are you feeling about Saka now then?
Awful. Just generally awful.
Do you play 90
He played 90, man. Why?
Got an assist though for Gyökeres
in the 84th minute. Yeah.
I mean,
why? Why does he have to do that? I think I'm going to hate myself for saying this, and I can already see myself clipping this in a week when he gets benched against Man United. Surely he plays. Surely he has to
I'm
start
sure.
against Man United.
I think United's a game. I'm hoping that kind of the rest against Forest was the rest.
I think so.
Arteta's already said about being careful with him because there was kind of a Harry Kane level flogging going on. I think that now we've slightly changed the paradigm on that. So hopefully I think it should be fine against United.
Yeah, and then they've got the midweek. They've got the midweek after with a fairly easy Champions League time. They're already now qualified for the top 8 as well, aren't they?
Yeah, because City lost to Glimpse that we are through already. So there's nothing to worry about there.
Yeah. So basically, if I'm trying to read the tea leaves, Saka plays against United. It's also not a quick turnaround. There's a good gap to the Man United game. I think he plays, and then rest in the midweek, probably plays the week after as well. So yeah, look, he's not good value. I don't love having him, and he's a cash cow if I need it. If I want to get Mbeumo as well as Bruno next week, then Saka could be the one that goes, and I could probably get Rice in there as well somehow. But I think at home to Man United, I'm going to hold on to him and just hope that finally it pays dividends holding on, because he's getting more differential by the week.
Saka gonna Saka. It will happen. It will happen. Honestly.
One day.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It's all going to happen for you, Sam. I promise. So you will find Szoboszlai will finally rediscover his goal scoring form, score a free kick from 30 yards. Saka's going to get a brace, and anything like that. It's all going to happen. I promise. This week, team's looking great, and it's just one of those things that you just get the right one. I just want to spike variants with Alderete, just thinking, what, they might score a goal from a set piece, because they've got a few players from AFCON now, but yeah, I'd go for that. Anderson's not really a set piece threat, let's be real. Anderson, that isn't really a set piece threat, so I'd maybe go for that, and then take a judgment over Hall versus Rodgers. But I think probably I'd play Rodgers really because of the EO.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, cool, thank you. Let's move across to yours.
So I'm ready to be hurt again because I've got O'Reilly back on the pitch. Yes, O'Reilly is playing for me at the moment over Chow and Anderson. I don't know whether that's going to stick, honestly, because I feel like I've had my fill of Nico O'Reilly for the time being. So maybe I'll end up playing Anderson myself against what I've just said. I think I want to play Rodgers over. I don't know, because Chow's quite DEFCON friendly, AFCON's DEFCON friendly, Anderson's DEFCON friendly. One of those two is probably going to do it. But O'Reilly did well against the Leeds all that time ago. This is the sort of game where he could do well, but I just haven't got the faith he's going to start, honestly. So in my actual team, I think I've got Anderson on at the moment. I took this screenshot earlier on today. I think I had O'Reilly in, but in my actual team, I think I've got Anderson on the pitch at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it is a decent team for this week. And I was thinking about making defensive transfer, but honestly, O'Reilly, if he does lose value, he loses value. That is, it will be what it will be. He'll stick around for a bit, because hear me out. I can roll this week. Next week, Ekatike to one of Mane or Krupi.
Yeah,
I've got Potts because I'm in a 3-4-3. He can go up to Bruno. I have lots of money in the bank. Foden would stay for the Spurs game, so Tottenham would see Phil the week that everyone else would be selling. And the next week, with lots of money still in the bank, I can do Foden to Bumo. So I can have a midfield 5 of Rodgers, Wilson, Bumo, Bruno, Rice, with Thiago and Haaland up front. And I think that is actually a very, very decent plan, because I think a lot of people will come on to the United thing a little bit later, because that's just how the FPL community goes these days. So I really like that, and I think I'm going to do it.
Okay, I like that.
Obviously that means I roll this week and keep my options open, but game 25, if I did do that move, I still have a whopping 2.6 million in the bank, and by that point. So even if Palmer comes back in, even if Salah comes back into the reckoning, I can still do it. And the back, Gabriel, Chow, Tarkovsky, Anderson, and O'Reilly, but whatever, would do a decent job. As we mentioned, Man United, Arsenal, Fulham, Villa, all in the frame for being quite a decent sort of turnaround in terms of the fixtures. Up front, Thiago is just there for effective ownership at this point, but he's been very good with me, so I'm going to leave him there, and the fixtures do turn, as you noticed earlier on. And Haaland, perfect, done. So I think I'm going to give that a go. I really do. I think it's probably one of those things that's just worth sticking with. Obviously, there's going to be an injury which is going to derail that, but it does mean rolling this week. And it probably means that my biggest question, Sam, is which one out of Anderson at home to Brighton, Chow at home to Villa, well, I've got Rodgers, or O'Reilly at home to Wolves, do I start? And I think it's probably going to be Anderson, just because I've got Rodgers playing Chow. I don't like the kind of 50-50. O'Reilly, I don't think he's going to start. I know Anderson will start versus Brighton. And I hope, as per my 1 week punt, that Brighton turn up and aren't very good. So Anderson does well.
I think if it wasn't for Rodgers, I'd be starting Chow out of those three. But obviously, the direct head-to-head isn't helpful. It's just that, I think you referenced it earlier, the Tom Hadley stuff around which teams give up the DEFCON. Chow is gonna hit those extra 2 points against Villa, right? So and at home, Newcastle.
Yeah, that might be the swinger actually.
Yeah, it's just like you say, the head-to-head between Rodgers and Chow is less than ideal. So yeah, if you want to maximize upside, then obviously you don't go with both of them. And I kind of agree with the sentiment that Rodgers is the priority 1-2 start, given the ownership as well as obviously the upside there. So yeah, I have no problem with you starting O'Reilly, Anderson, or Chow, to be completely honest. I think they're all fine. Obviously, the caveat is if O'Reilly even starts that game, that doubt probably means that Anderson is the way to go if you don't want to have that head-to-head between Chow and Rodgers. So you've got more than enough cover this week. I'd be rolling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I will. I mean, I think that any defensive move I make just closes off this flexibility, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
But I feel like I can't go there. O'Reilly, fine, can sit on first or second bench, and if the effective ownership isn't going to be high enough, I know this is not what a lot of people want to hear, but fair enough. The effective ownership and how City have been isn't good enough, and if he does end up being benched, it's going to annoy me. Maybe, but it won't annoy me as much as it has last week, because I think that it's a lot more sound this week in terms of not playing him, because I think the reasonable risk is high enough. Maybe there'll be something that'll come out which see him playing, but yeah, I really like kind of eventually getting to Bruno and Bumo in the midfield. I think that'll be a really kind of solid differential, which will see me through the next kind of 6 or 7 weeks. So yeah, God, I don't know. There might be a world, Sam, if Bruno does kind of score against Arsenal on Sunday, that he ends up in my team on Sunday night, because I think that we might be reaching to a point soon where every 0.1 counts. But hey, all right. And I just realized I've seen what time it is. Let's move on to the very end.
Yeah, we promised yet again to have a shorter pod, and we're up to an hour and a half once more. So it's just what we do over here, isn't it? We get carried away. But yeah, very enjoyable talking to you as always, Tom. And thank you all so much for listening out there, especially during the Champions League midweek. So as always, we have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at Who Got the Assist, all written out, one word, or myself at FPL Pricey. On X, it's WGTA_FPL. Again, just FPL Pricey on there for me. And on YouTube, it's Who Got the Assist, all written out, one word. And I'm on there at FPL Pricey. If you did enjoy the pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a follow on those social channels, give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And of course, leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here on YouTube. And we'd really appreciate all of those things. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being with us. Next time, due to my work schedule, sadly, we'll be back on Sunday. So before the game was actually finished up, and before Tarkovsky, after I benched him last week, gets me 2 points. But yeah, we'll hope to see you then. Hope we assist you think about the swings in detail, and hopefully got you back interested in FPL. We'll see you next Sunday.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?